Good afternoon, and welcome to another exciting episode of Wiley Motorsports Entertainment here, as we are going to be talking about, an article that came across my desk this afternoon while looking for other things. And it very clearly, in a way that is usually harder to pick up, this article very clearly shows exactly how the media works, how the pattern works, how they can take something that is not true and spin it into something that appears to be true, okay? Is an article written October 10th of this year, and that would be today. First of all, before we even get any further, it uses information, and I don't want to click on it because it will lead me to another link, but the information is a source survey of U.S. adults conducted October 4th through 17th, 2021, a year ago. That for starters. Black Lives Matter tops the list of groups that Black Americans see as helping them as most in recent years. Bullshit! This article was written by John Gramlich, I don't know who that is, and Khadijah Edwards. I don't know who she is either, but at any rate, gets you down here, get down here. Now, you get to the actual important stuff of the article. Nearly 4 in 10 Black adults say that Black Lives Matter has done the most to help Black people in recent years. Again. Yeah, no. They ask people, percentage of Black adults who say that blank has done the most to help Black people in the most in recent years. Black Lives Matter, 39%. Okay. So if you ask a bunch of people, which agency has done the most, agency, movement, whatever, has done the most to help Black people in recent years, and 39% say Black Lives Matter, that means mathematically there is 61% of people who don't believe that Black Lives Matter has done that much for Black people. 17% says the NAACP. I have some issues long-standing with that organization for corruption, although it started out very well about a century ago. In recent decades, it has become rather corrupt, unfortunately. And then the next third answer is someone else. And then under that, it's just someone else. Literally anyone else. So anything else other than BLM and the NAACP is the third most popular answer. And then after that, Black churches, the Congressional Black Caucus, that's how useless those Democrats are. Like all Democrats, useless, dishonest, and corrupt. And then the National Urban League. So if you add these things together, I'm just going to do some quick math here. 39 plus 17 plus 14 plus 13 plus 6 plus 3. Those figures combined only equal 92%. You're still missing the other 8% of whatever respondent said. If you take just the top two answers, 39 plus 17, that's still only 56% of people believe that either one of those two organizations has done the most for Black people. The really important thing, though, that is conveniently ignored by the people writing this article is that only 39% believe that this has helped people, Black people, in recent years. Again, that means 61% of people do not agree with that statement. And of course, they won't tell you because they have an agenda, as you can tell by the headline here. They will not tell you, but I have done other research into various things that have reported on this, and different surveys and studies and things. The amount of support within the Black community for Black Lives Matter is roughly equal to the amount of people that directly oppose it. it's around 40%. So around 40% of black people oppose BLM, and around 39% of black people support BLM, with about 20% in the middle. There's always people, I don't know what they think. So the reality is that the amount of support and the amount of opposition within the black community for this organization, or this movement, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is about dead even. Oh, I could, as a right-wing person, I could easily say, oh, there's more black people that oppose it. No, that's not accurate. Statistically, the number is slightly higher of people that oppose it by like 1%, but it's, margin of error and whatnot. It would just be more accurate to say roughly the same amount of people oppose it as support it. That's a factual statement. Okay? So, and you have all these other news articles, support by black people for BLM is in the 80%. No, it's not. It's about even. This is about the same number of people who think it's just a nice catchphrase that's generally worthless as people who actually think it does some good. You know why people think that? Maybe because the people who started it are dishonest pieces of shit. Let's see if I can get rid of this ad. Move. All right, well, clear collapse ad. There we go. Okay. This is written by Ebony Magazine on May 11th of this year. Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrisse Cullors, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I don't really have a lot of respect for this person, so I don't really care. And normally I'm a stickler for pronunciation. Admits to using BLM mansion for personal use. Oh, not just using. They bought it for personal use. Because the unfortunate reality is that the leadership of black culture and black people, especially in terms of politics, black people in this country of the left have been lying, deceiving, another popular word, bamboozling, and straight off just ripping black people off for well over a century, really since immediately after the Civil War. I believe the modern term for this is called grifting. Okay? Where black people lie to other black people in order to get support, money, donations, anything, whatever, political clout, status in the Democrat Party, and they don't give a shit about black people. As exhibited by the behavior of the two women who started BLM and then used it as their own personal piggy bank, because the honest truth of the matter is, that was their intention the whole time. They don't give a shit. They're no different than Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, both of whom have decades-long histories of being race hustlers. If you really want to support black people, do what I do. Buy from black-owned businesses. From Eric July up in Dallas, a black business owner who wanted to create a whole line of comic books, and I'm not getting paid for any endorsement or anything. I just love the product and the man who made it, who decided to make a series of non-woke comic books on a $200,000 investment and has now made $3.7 million with just the first issue. If you want to support black people, support good, high-quality, black-owned businesses that make good products and actually give a shit about you, who are good, honest, morally upright people, as are most black people. I should know. My whole neighborhood's full of fantastic black people. Most of them have nicer houses than I do. And fantastic for them. What you look like doesn't matter. Who you are as a person and as a character is the only thing that matters in this life. What you do, how you behave, how you treat other people, and whether you are honest or dishonest is what defines you as a human being, not your damn skin color. Nobody cares. Oh, I'm sure there's 5 or 6 people in certain parts of the country that's their obsession. I'd call them, they don't matter. Okay, I'm aware that there's a contingent of KKK fuckers up in northern Idaho somewhere. Yeah, okay. But for the rest of the country, we don't care. if you're a good person of high moral quality and outstanding personal integrity, we will love and support the hell out of you and everything you do. This has always been the case. Or at least as long as I've been alive, since 1981. And for a great many decades before that, from what I can tell. At any rate, the two people who started BLM used donations, many of which were from black people, to purchase a $6 million Los Angeles mansion and used it for personal parties. No, they lived in the damn thing. In an interview with the Associated Press, she spoke out about the compound in Studio City, which, by the way, I grew up in. I don't know the exact address of the house because I don't think they've ever actually disclosed it. But if they haven't sold that mansion by now, they better get to selling that mansion. Because either they're paying off Democrats to not investigate this, which, from what I understand, was how that started, and then I don't know if maybe they stopped paying Democrats or something, because Democrats supported the hell out of this whole movement. And Democrats are now investigating BLM in numerous states. And the only way you can have a switch like that from people who are behind the scenes and in public supporting your movement to being harshly anti your movement on the same side of the political aisle is if you didn't grease enough palms on your way in the door. So really what likely happened is there was a bunch of Democrats that they were supposed to bribe with X amounts of money, and instead of doing that, they did this. And when this was found out by Democrats, and they realized how many people had their, behind the scenes, they got pissed and decided to start targeting BLM. And rightfully so. You should have targeted them the whole time, because none of this was ever honest. It's all a giant grift. And it ain't the first time it's happened, and it ain't gonna be the last time it's happened. It's just something people do. White people, black people, any colored people. If someone thinks they can make a lot of money by being dishonest, they will be dishonest and make a lot of money. Happens all the time. There's a compound in Studio City with 6 homes, or 6 bedrooms and bathrooms, a swimming pool, soundstage, office space. It was meant to be both a meeting venue and a campus for black artists. Oh, shut up. No. It was for you to brag to all your friends how much money you had made with this dishonest scam, which is what it is. It was always a scam. When details of the purchase went public, the move was criticized by BLM supporters like Justin Hansford, director of the Thurgood Marshall Civil Rights Center at Howard University. He argued that the property could lead donors to lose trust. Could? No, should. You never should have had any trust in this organization because they're a bunch of lying, scheming bastards. Okay? He argued that the property could lead donors to lose trust and shy away from helping black-led social justice organizations. All of these left-wing social justice organizations are dishonest, corrupt entities, which generally, on the external outside, purport to give a shit about the cause that they were supposedly created to help advocate, but in reality serve as a means of employment and fundraising for the Democrat Party and employment for the people who work for the organization. There's a lot of money to be made, or a lot of profit, to be made in nonprofit. That's the thing that you don't want to get out of hand. Yeah, God forbid people should actually figure out that you're all a bunch of lying, scheming pieces of shit human beings who don't actually care about black people at all. Only care about your own pocketbooks. God forbid people should find that out. We really wanted to make sure that the Global Network Foundation had an asset that wasn't just financial resources, and we understood that not many black-led organizations have property. No, they run their scams more intelligently than you do. You people didn't have any experience in how the left usually tries to keep things under the radar while accumulating mass fortunes. And I'm sure you had prominent Democrats come to your thing and was like, hey, we have ways of doing this back channel stuff. And they probably got arrogant, were high on their own supply, figured, nah, man, we're making all this money. And I'm not endorsing Democrat tactics. But these people clearly had no experience and did not feel that they should bend the knee. Well, really, nobody should bend the knee to the Democrats because they're the worst of all of them. But they didn't feel they should bend the knee and grease the palms of certain Democrats behind the scenes. And this somehow got outed. On one occasion, she hosted a gathering of 15 people to celebrate the inauguration of Biden and Harris. I ain't gonna go there right now. Held a private birthday party for her son at the property, insisted on paying a rental fee to the foundation. Every one of these foundations is nothing more than a giant scam, as the biggest and most egregious of which is the Clinton Foundation, but that's a separate video. I look back and I think that probably wasn't the best idea. Nah, it's not that you regret doing it. It's that you regret getting caught. Outside of hosting private events at the compound, she vehemently denied benefiting financially. Oh, of course. So on and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, people who actually want to help black people, they get vilified by the mainstream media as racists. Like this man. This is, by the way, not some shill piece for Trump. This is by ucsantabarbara.edu. This is the official website of the University of California, Santa Barbara, a college run by left-wing people. And even they have to admit, and this was written 2 years ago, prior to the election of 20, even they have to admit that the facts speak for themselves. This is a man who actually cares about trying to lift black people out of poverty. And has shown it with his actions. This is why he is one of the many reasons he is such a massive threat to the left, which is one of the many reasons they vilify him constantly as they do. Because he is a massive threat to their political narrative. Because their political narrative is this. But the reality is that it's all bullshit. Meanwhile, the person who actually genuinely does care and showed it with his actions during his presidency, when he signed the First Step Act into law, 90% of people who benefited from the First Step Act were black Americans. People who were sent away to prison on what would seem like now trivial marginal drug charges and things of that nature, low-level offenses. Law allows offenders sentenced under racially motivated, that's hard to prove, but mandatory minimums to petition for reevaluation, ready to work initiative, that's the biggest thing, which helps release prisoners gain meaningful employment, because meaningful employment will prevent them from reoffending and going right back to prison, because they have to change their behavioral patterns, otherwise they will never get any better and they will just end right back in prison. Proposed the Second Step Act during Trump's 4 years in office during the economy. 1.4 million more black Americans had found a job. I'm not sure then what. But black poverty reached a historic low in 2019. Again, this is not some shill for the right wing. ucsb.edu. Google it. President Trump designated 8,760 opportunity zones that are projected to spur $100 billion in private investment in minority communities. I guarantee you Biden has shut those down. I'd be shocked if he hadn't. Trump administration established a fund to deploy $1 billion in capital funding for minority-owned businesses through the Commerce Department. That I wholeheartedly support. Black-owned businesses. I support everyone owning small businesses. I didn't used to be quite as anti-corporate as I've become, but with the last events of the last few years, let's see here. President Trump's 2020 budget called for $500 million in federal funding for school choice. In 2018, he signed legislation increasing school choice. Yeah, and that's the thing. And coming from, well, we used to live in Milwaukee for around Milwaukee for 17 years, this is a huge thing that's going on in Milwaukee and has been for decades, where public school enrollment has been steadily declining in Milwaukee among black families, where black families are desperately trying to get their kids into, I don't know if they're not privately owned. I believe they're charter schools. Not sure exactly how the funding for that works, but one of them is called St. Marcus in downtown Milwaukee, where all of these kids are expected to wear uniforms. The behavioral pattern is extremely, the behavioral rules are strictly enforced. It's a very structured environment, kind of like my son's new school here in Texas, except that it's not a public school. And Democrats who are allied with the teachers union have been trying to desperately fight that off for years. St. Marcus has been growing so much over the past couple of decades that they ran out of room and needed more space. There was abandoned buildings owned by the Milwaukee public school system, and Milwaukee public school system refused to sell them to St. Marcus, which is nearly all black kids. So they went and took them to court, or they were threatening to take them to court. And as I recall, only at that point, Milwaukee County Public School District sold the buildings to some private developer for like $1, basically just to keep them out of the hands of these charter schools, which are massively more productive and helpful towards black kids than public schools are in Milwaukee. Because of these damn public school unions. Thank God we don't have them here in Texas. I'm so happy. So, these people claim to care about black people while actively fucking over black kids. Constantly. You saw it during the Kung Flu, where all these teachers unions kept trying to, no, I don't want to go to school. We don't want to reopen school. We don't want to reopen school. We don't want to reopen school. Oh, virtual learning. I watched my kid during virtual learning, and I don't even want to go into how bad that was. I was furious. These teachers at his old middle school only paid attention to him about once every 45 minutes. Literally just, he's autistic and in special ed in a class full of 10 kids. And even then, about every 45 minutes were they even aware that he was existing. He frequently turned off his camera, turned off his mic, nobody even noticed. For nearly hours at a time. So, you want to hear what black people actually think?
Shrimp and grits with a side of political conversation.
There's a modicum of truth to that unicorn thing.
At this lunch table in Charlotte, North Carolina, there's unabashed support for President Donald Trump.
So he's delivered on quite a few of the promises that he's made, but nobody wants to admit that.
According to the Pew Research Center, in 2016, 81% of black male voters cast their ballot for Hillary Clinton. For black women, that number rose to 98%.
I think when I would debate students on campus, they would definitely listen.
In this battleground state, Dayla Frazier wishes the Republican Party would do more to reach out to black communities.
I've never seen anyone from the right come to my community door, knock on my door, and explain to me anything.
Trump has faced criticism for repeatedly saying he's done more for black Americans than any other president. But these three agree.
You'll have to explain to me why, as a racist, he would provide historical levels of funding for historically black colleges and universities. You'll have to explain to me opportunity zones. I never heard a word about Donald Trump being racist until he came down the escalator.
100% accurate. The media loved him. I've shown the roast of Donald Trump. I've showed other SNL skits where he was in. Trump used to be invited to the some of the biggest parties and was generally beloved by most of the people. Unfortunately, he was under the mistaken impression that I believe his name is Jeff Zucker, who was head of NBC and head of CNN, was somehow his friend. And unfortunately, and Trump did make quite a few mistakes tactically while in office and since then, and believing that just because he had a business relationship with these people in the mainstream media, that they would be nicer to him than they were usually to Republicans. No, these people have no ethics whatsoever. If they think that they have a chance of getting more funding from this or getting more ratings from that or anything or it counters their pre-existing political narrative, they will turn on you in a dime. It's a mistake that Trump made, unfortunately. these people all, the minute he came down that escalator, every single last one of them turned on a dime and instantly made him the world's biggest villain.
Later.
Being black supporters of President Trump, they're used to getting a double take. This time was no different, as a young couple who asked to stay off camera pulled up their chairs to listen.
I've never seen 3 black Republicans, never in my life.
And also debate.
He got kids in cages. I cannot agree with that on any level.
You're here, I'm here. Let's talk about the differences on why you believe this way, I believe here.
Just weeks from Election Day, this group is banking on another 4 years. Sarah Blake Morgan, The Associated Press.
I'm going to see if it will. There we go. Yeah, it'll play this one. Now, I'm also going to play this video because I think it so clearly illustrates the tactics of the mainstream media. Watch how they treat this woman and what she has to say.
Why?
I don't know. He's hitting on a lot of measures that I'm kind of like concerned about.
Talk about Trump.
Like what? Tell me what.
Well, the black community, I am concerned about us. Being able to get employment, education for black people is very serious and critical here in Los Angeles. Issues would be illegal immigration. And I believe that that's really a big problem here in Los Angeles, especially for, working class people who are trying to survive and live here. We've been maintaining and trying to survive here, and then we can't get jobs. Not saying that I don't want people to be able to come here to this country and be able to, get a new life, but what about the people that are here?
It doesn't concern you that...
Well, and that's just it. On the subject of illegal immigration, when you have people who come here from places with nothing, they are willing to, and I have nothing against them for doing this, so I would do the same thing, they are willing to work for less than Americans who are already here. This puts economic competition between people who just got here versus people who are already here, and it makes people who are already here, who have bills to pay, this, that to pay, and several other things to pay, whereas the people who just got here don't yet have those responsibilities because they haven't established themselves yet. It puts an unfair competitive advantage in favor of the cheaper labor. Now, in many cases, the cheaper labor is sometimes more skilled labor, sometimes it's not. Varies by the person. But the end point is it's economic competition between those people, and that's what she's trying to say. It ain't got nothing to do with racism. It has to do with the fact that these other people are willing to work for less, and thus they get all the jobs, which now screws you out of a potential opportunity that you could have had a job because capitalism and market forces being what they are. Ain't got nothing to do with race. She's correct. Now watch how they try to lead her with these biased as questions.
It doesn't concern you that Trump lies about everything?
Yeah, because that's not a loaded question.
He lies, but what politician doesn't?
Correct.
Trump doesn't like Black Lives Matter.
I don't like Black Lives Matter. I love Black Lives. I just oppose BLM.
Trump loves the cops. He thinks people shouldn't be protesting against the police. He doesn't believe there's any racism in America.
There is some racism in some parts of America. It is unescapable. However, it does not play a major role in the culture besides the racism that is artificially stoked by people on the left who intentionally drive a wedge down the middle of the culture in order to alienate people, because God forbid people ever actually became unified and came together and realized that a lot of the things they've been told by the left are full of shit. They might no longer put Democrats into office, and that would be the end of the Democrat Party. Thus, they have to constantly drive a wedge down the middle of this culture. Otherwise, they will never get elected again because they have no ideas, because they can't compete in a debate for anything. All of their ideas are unworkable, and every time they've been tried, they've failed. And when they've been tried in other countries by authoritarian dictatorships and authoritarian governments, they've led to the deaths of millions of people. Socialism does not work. Communism does not work. Marxism does not work. Period. Every time it's been tried, it has failed, and many people have died. So, their ideas are unworkable. Therefore, the only way that they have a path into power is by lying to people and stoking up division and hatred between peoples who otherwise would not really have a problem with each other.
America.
Well, I believe there is racism. And we have good cops and we have bad cops. I don't have a problem with police officers. Many inner city black people do. I don't. You know, and there's not all racism in there. Like any group of people, you have good, you have bad.
Yep.
So, I mean, we just have to weed out the bad officers, and that's just it. That's just the way I feel. I feel like we're being smothered here and starved out of California.
And Trump is going to change that?
Trump is not going to change it, but I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon with people who's been smothering my people out.
You're looking at two evils, if you want to put it that way. So which one do we choose? We choose what is in our best interest. We're allowing our hatred for President Trump to overwhelm our better interests.
And who's stoking that hatred? The people who cannot win because he knows on a consistent basis, for all of his many flaws, and he has quite a few flaws, even though I very staunchly support the man, he regularly competes, confronts, and tackles the people on the left head on, and frequently beats them at their own game. That's why they hate him. If he had come out and declared as a Democrat, none of this would be happening. And many people on the right-wing side of the aisle, we did not fully trust that man because for decades he had a history of donating to Democrats. Because, as I have come to understand, well, eventually came to understand, because I did not initially trust and support him either. I wanted Governor Walker of Wisconsin to win the 2016 presidential race. Although, to be fair, what I wanted from Walker, I got from Trump. So I'm more than happy with my vote. Walker had a better way of handling, more dignified, it's not better, more dignified way of handling people on the left. Trump doesn't operate that way. He operates head on, balls to the wall, horns in your face, style of confronting these people. Now, you can either like that or dislike that. I'll agree it may not be presidential, although to be fair, it is shockingly similar to the tactics used by President Teddy Roosevelt about 100 years ago, who was a lot like Trump. And in some ways like parts of Andrew Jackson's personality, but especially Teddy Roosevelt. You have been taught to hate Trump. And that only started in 16, by the way. 15, excuse me. Misspoke. 15. And he came down the escalator. Prior to that, nobody had a problem with him. People loved him. But the minute he announced as a Republican, the left freaked the hell out. Why? Because the reality is the overwhelming majority of black people liked him and respected him. And many black people wanted to emulate his level of success, as do many white people. Oh, he's not perfect, and I'm aware that it's a brand. You know, Trump as a person is a brand. But even with some of his business failures over the years, that man has successfully stoked an image of success. American success, New York success. And of all the places where it is hard to become successful, that is the hardest. And they hated him for it. The minute he announced on the right-wing side of the aisle, they set out on an intentional campaign to destroy that man. And they have been on it ever since. You can even tell by the way these people are asking the questions. They are loaded at, hell, don't you know that Trump lies about, this is not a fair, balanced question being asked of a person. This is, I hate this guy. Don't you hate this guy with me? This is how they operate. This is how they do news coverage of him. This is how they do political commentary of him. This is how they do late night talk show jokes about him. There's a new term for it called Trump Derangement Syndrome, or TDS. This man lives rent-free in their heads, and he will continue to do so, probably for a good generation or so. They hate him. More importantly than what they hate about him is they hate who supports him, because the reality is the left-wing part of this, the left-wing people of this country, and I don't mean your average liberals, okay? That's just liberals and conservatives is just a matter of differences over what government should and should not fund and how much you should pay in taxes. This is semantics difference. We can argue about that all day. I mean the left-wing people who have hijacked the Democrat Party between 04 and 06. The people who kicked Joe Lieberman out of that party. Those people are full tilt Marxist. They are hate-filled people, while fraudulently trying to convince the entire rest of the world that it is my side of the aisle, which is hateful. Nah, fuck you. And fuck your fraudulent narrative.
Our better interest is to let this continue as it is, and let us get our gains. That's how we got our civil rights stuff. We got them incrementally. We didn't get them once. The whole world was in our side with George Floyd.
I ain't going there, because that's a whole different topic. But I can try to empathize with this man, even though I disagree with what he's saying.
The whole world. They came to us. And then what happened? We turned on each other. We started looting, burning, robbing. We became ugly.
Yeah. See, this has already happened before. This is what these people of this new generation don't understand. People of my generation, we've seen this shit before. This whole cycle. It's called the riots of, 92? The Rodney King riots? And then the generation before that saw their own riots. The riots after MLK was assassinated, although to be fair, no rioting is justifiable. But if you ever had a level of anger that was righteous and justified, that would have been it. But riots in Detroit, riots in Chicago, it was 60, I don't even remember what year, mid-60s through the early 70s. Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, the Democrat National Convention, I think, of 68. Okay? It's just riots all the time. And then a generation after that, early 90s, the Rodney King riots. And then a generation after that, the George Floyd situation. And in Wisconsin, where we lived, the Officer Mensa shooting, the one in Kenosha with Rittenhouse, all that mess. This is a generational cycle. You see, the thing with the Democrats is they have to continue to provoke black people into believing that white people are out to get them. Otherwise, if they lose the support of the Democrat Party, as a matter of statistics, they lose elections automatically. Because if they cannot get at least 90% of black people to vote for them, they're done. They also need a certain number of women, a certain number of other minorities, although they've been losing that forever, because the overwhelming majority of Hispanic people do not support the Democrat Party. My understanding is, and I have to double check my facts, I believe it's somewhere around 30%, I think, support in Hispanic community. But among black people, who are, I think the last time I saw a statistic was around 13% of the U.S. population, don't quote me, it's somewhere between 10 and 20%. Without that 90% of those votes, the Democrats cannot win elections, ever. So they have to stoke this racial animosity and remind people of it every so often so that white people and black people will buy into the narrative, which is automatically disproven by their own existence in lower black income communities, where some people figure it out, get this shit together, start a business, and eventually get enough income and money that they get out of the ghetto, which is the dream of every black person from the ghetto I've ever known, is to get up out the ghetto. Subject of the movie Friday, the sequel to Friday, Boys in the Hood, all that. Which reminds me, I need to rewatch Friday again. I ain't seen that in a hot minute. I love that movie. Anyway, the Democrat Party and the left and all of their non-directly affiliated organizations, but are directly behind the scenes affiliated organizations, they all have to do their part to stoke this hatred between everybody. Otherwise, they can't win elections. Because God forbid people stop feeling angry, embittered, jealous, envious, fearful, whatever, and actually start using the logical half of their brain, the Democrats lose every argument every time. Because their policies don't work. And if you want evidence of that, look at Joe Biden. Inflation through the roof, oil prices through the roof, and so on and so forth. Democrats cannot be trusted to run anything because all they ever have experience in running is government or nonprofit organizations. They have no idea how to actually make money because they've never done it. They work for organizations or they go to work for organizations which either grant them automatic money via government where they don't have to outcompete other people, with the exception of the military, or they get into these nonprofit organizations which, again, they get funding and donations. They don't really have to outcompete other organizations. None of these people have ever owned a business in their life. Democrats. So they have no idea how to generate revenue and increase revenue. So which is why they always want higher taxes, but they don't understand that by lowering taxes actually, shockingly, I know, increases revenue into the government coffers. Every single time it's tried. But because they don't understand how to run anything, because all they've ever run is government, which they should never be in charge of, okay? They have to do these kinds of tactics to get people to act on emotion, instead of using the damn brain to figure out that the policies of these people do not work, and they never have. The only people that are served by the policies of the Democrat Party are the Democrat Party and these nonprofit organizations. A lot of these black people figure this out.
Vulgar, nasty, violent. Now, nobody likes us. We don't even like each other.
I like you.
Nobody likes us. President Trump, whether you like him or not, this man was not prepared to be no president.
I disagree.
But
Sorry.
This man has grown into the presidency. I never told you I like Trump. You're assuming that. What I said was, I'm picking out things that are to his advantage.
Amazing. So they get a couple of people in here who directly contradict their narrative, and at the end of that, black voters overwhelmingly backed Biden. Yeah. Like I said, if you stop acting on your emotions and you start thinking for yourself, whatever skin color you are, don't matter. Start thinking for yourself and looking at the governmental fiscal policies of that party, it doesn't take very long to figure out that they suck. They have no idea how to run anything because they've never been trusted to run anything that actually had to compete against other things in order to survive. Shockingly enough, there is one exception, and I'm not trying to promote this, but I do have to grant credit. There are people on the left who have run drug businesses who do have to outcompete against other businesses. Those people do understand what it takes to run a business. Unfortunately, they don't understand what it takes to run a business legally, morally, ethically, but they do understand what it means to run how to run that kind of a business. So, just being honest, if I was to say that all left-wing people don't understand it, that's not accurate. But these people cannot survive based on the strength of their ideas. Their ideas fail every single time. So they have to resort to these kind of tactics. And we've seen it time and time and time again in order to get people to think that racism is still alive and well in this country. Okay? And again, for the 5 to 10 people up in northern Idaho who are members of the KKK, fuck you. But for everybody else in this country who ain't got nothing to do with those morons up there, we don't care about your race. We never have. Racism's dead. Oh, there's differences in culture between inner city, white, black, Hispanic, whatever people, inner city people, and suburban and rural people. There's cultural differences that will never go away between those two groups, but they ain't got nothing to do with skin color. They need to stop this lying shit, start telling the truth. But of course they can't do that, because if the minute they were to start doing that, that would be the end of this entire thing. And they would actually have to, like, start up a new party, founded upon new principles, and on and on and on. Which they're never going to do. Rule number 1 in conning people is never give up the con. So, you've seen what black people actually have to say. I could literally just go video after video after video showing black people expressing support for Trump. And yet, Trump's a racist and whatever. I'm so sick of these dishonest people. My patience is at its end. So, again, my whole point, you see how the truth is 61% of black people do not think this organization does dick for them. You've seen these people say that not a racist. He's not this. He's not that. These are the things that you people asking these questions want to focus on. We don't think that matters. We care about economics. We care about this. We care about that. You're not listening to us. And you just hear, you see the people asking the questions. Well, don't you? They just leading them on. And they're like, no. And at the end of all of that, I'm surprised they even actually put that out. But after all of that, God, that just adds it. Jesus Christ. Robust safeguards to help ensure the integrity of integrity. No, just for so many reasons, no. At any rate, you've seen what these people actually think. You've seen black people express their support for Trump. And yet still, black voters overwhelmingly backed Biden. No. I don't really buy it. I don't know that we're ever going to find out the real number of people who actively support the Democrats. Because from what I can tell from different polls and whatnot, black conservatives don't seem to think that voting does much of a difference. I think it's like 40-something% of black conservatives who feel that voting as black conservatives does much of a difference, and they don't vote as often, which really sucks. Excuse me. Whereas left-wing black people, like 80-90% plus, feel that voting. So, and maybe that's why the number is as high as it is. But all I know is if the Democrats do not have 90+% of the black vote, they lose elections. They know it. I know it. Hell, people in the Republican Party know it. And yet still, other than Trump, you don't see massive outreaches from Republicans into black communities. Why? Conservatism has so much to offer everybody. And I'm not talking about religious conservatism, okay? You get away from that. Because it's just too easy of a weak point for the left to attack. Don't, just regular secular conservatism. Okay? What used to be called, hell, a century ago, classical liberalism, laissez-faire economics, lack of government intervention. Help people start their own businesses. Again, if they make good product, $200,000 investment, $3.7 million in sales in a 90-day period. Support black businesses, conservative or libertarian or moderate or non-political black businesses. That's how you help solve the racism problem. Oh, that's not going to stop these dishonest pieces of shit from constantly trying to drive a wedge down the culture, doing all kinds of dishonest tactics, hoping to get away with it, to to try to drive that narrative home that there's still some huge phantom racism out in the woods. No, nobody cares. My two greatest role models growing up: Captain Benjamin Sisko of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, played by Avery Brooks; Commander Worf, played by Michael Dorn, both black men. My two biggest role models growing up. Not because they're black, because the moral ethics as espoused by those characters in those TV shows, or in that one TV show, were of the highest moral quality. They were fantastic role models. Fictional characters don't matter. They were fantastic role models, played by equally excellent and amazing people in real life. Just like white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, there are good black people and there are bad black people. Support the good ones, because there's way more of them than there are of the minority of not so good ones. Just like there's not so good white people and not so good other races of people. Good portion of my biological family, unfortunately, falls into that category among the white people. They're not so good. Okay? Skin color is irrelevant. If you're a corrupt, evil, garbage human being, it don't matter what your skin color is. Find the good people. They're everywhere. I got a whole town, city full of them here in the middle of Texas. And all the ones I've talked to, they don't want nothing to do with this shit. They don't want their kids. My whole street is just full of black people, black families with kids. They are good, amazing people, and they don't want their kids having anything to do with this shit. They don't want their kids having anything to do with the inner city culture either. Which, around here, from what I've been told, largely came in the door when, after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of people from New Orleans were welcomed into this area, and unfortunately, there's a certain criminal element to the culture of New Orleans, and apparently it was brought with these people, and that's when most of the problems in this area started, from what I've been told by several black families. And they're trying to keep the kids away from that mess. This organization does not care about black people. They never have, and they never will. They care about filling their own pockets, getting in the good graces of the Democrat Party, and helping to elect Democrats, using driving the wedge of race right down the middle of the culture. They don't care what tactics they have to use in order to get that message across, but it's a fraudulent fucking narrative, and good black people, which again, I have the very fortunate to be surrounded by, they don't want their kids having nothing to do with this shit. They want their kids to grow up, be successful, go into the military, or start businesses, have kids of their own, get their own houses, be more successful than they were, which is the dream of every parent, to have kids that are more successful than you. That's what they want. Their dream is no different than anybody else. Again, to quote MLK, I have a dream that one day my 4 little girls will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. These people are not of good character. Black people are, but that is not. And it never has been. More and more people are starting to see it. And I am personally encouraged by the fact that 61% of people, of black people, do not believe that this organization has done dick for them. And they are correct. Like I said, support black-owned businesses from good people of good moral character. They are everywhere. Find them, see what kind of good, high-quality products they make, and support the living crap out of them. Same goes for white people. Same goes for Asian people. Same goes for Hispanic people. Find people that are of the highest moral caliber. Do business with them. That helps support them and their families. This is the first comic book I've ever bought. $55. Highly worth it. Because I support good people of good moral character. Regardless of what they look like. That's all I have for today. I wish you and yours a very pleasant evening.